Cybersecurity is front and center. You're not hearing as much about that because there's a lot of budget battles, but two bills were approved by House committees yesterday. They're expected to be considered on the House floor very soon. The House Oversight and Government Reform Committee passing H.R. 4257, which is the Federal Information Security Amendments Act, and also the Homeland Security Committee approving an amended version of what is called H.R. 3674. We wanted to get some more perspective on this and the battles that are being launched between the two. Someone who serves on the House Armed Services Committee, as well as the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, is Representative Jim Langevin, who is a Democrat from Rhode Island's 2nd Congressional District. And Congressman Langevin, thank you for being here this morning.
Good morning, Tim.
First, what is your sense of these bills? Because what we're seeing is that the White House is pushing certain things and Republicans are pushing. Is there a partisan argument here, or is there a philosophical difference?
Well, I think it's more on the probably a partisan difference. I would say. I mean, I guess both falls into the philosophical realm. I believe that the American people need stronger protection than what we have today, and sometimes in some ways companies in the private sector aren't moving aggressively enough, particularly in critical infrastructure, owners and operators of utilities, which again are in the hands of the private sector, which we all depend on, aren't doing enough to employ robust cybersecurity. But some of this, of course, is technical, and we need to obviously have stronger measures in place to allow for better information sharing, and that's a primary defense and a concern of mine, and we're pushing that, particularly in the House Intelligence Committee's bill that would allow for information sharing between the government and the private sector, and again, being able to better defend the nation's cyberspace. It's a real threat every day. Both individuals and proprietary information, personal information, intellectual property, and national security, quite frankly, is put at risk because of the cyber threats that we face today.
Right. Now, which one are you talking about? The one is what, the Promoting and Enhancing Cybersecurity and Information Sharing Act, the so-called PRECISE Act. That would be the Sharing Information Act with the private sector from Homeland Security, correct?
The bill that I'm talking about from the Intelligence Committee is the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act. That's
okay.
H.R. 3523.
All right. Okay, that's the other one. All right.
There are other bills that are making their way through the Congress. I was originally, and going back to your question about the differences between our philosophies or whether this is partisan or not, there was I thought a real bipartisan bill. I was proud to co-sponsor the bill that was in the House Homeland Security Committee. Congressman Langevin was pushing it, and what it was going to do, primarily one of the major parts of the bill, is that it was going to require some regulation on critical infrastructure, particularly on utilities and other aspects of critical infrastructure that we depend on. And the bill was just gutted, basically, and those requirements for regulations in terms of requiring more robust cybersecurity were basically taken out. So the bill is anemic at best, and I'm very disappointed that the Homeland Security Committee had a very strong bill. I know Chairman Langevin originally that's what he was pushing for, and it was in his legislation. And the reason I got on the bill was primarily because it was a robust, I felt a very strong bill, and it was just gutted basically by the Republican leadership, Speaker Boehner, and the very top members of the Republican leadership basically wouldn't support it because it would have put regulation on critical infrastructure, and industry basically has rejected those things, and that's disappointing.
I remember talking to him about that at the time. And what we're seeing also is there's a couple of, and the reason I asked the question about the philosophical versus the partisan is, for example, there are civil liberty groups that are very upset about some of this. And then it reminds me of what we had a month or two ago about SOPA and PIPA, which was all about really piracy and rights for intellectual property and so forth online. And what we're seeing is we're getting into an area here where we're, I guess, seeing a convergence of opposing priorities, and everyone wants security and everyone wants privacy, but somewhere in between the two are going to intersect, and somebody's going to get unhappy about this, I guess.
Right, and we have to strike, obviously, a very strong balance. It is important that we protect privacy and civil liberties. That has always been a top priority of mine. I recognize how important that is. But, quite frankly, people's privacy and their personal proprietary information every day right now is being put at risk or it's stolen or being hacked because of foreign adversaries or criminals who are hacking into private companies and stealing the data. So if people think they're secure right now, and somehow they're going to be their privacy and security is going to be less secure, they need to think again, because it's already happening. And the problem is, the information is getting into the hands of criminals or foreign governments, and I believe great damage is being caused both to our economic competitiveness and also our national security. So what we're trying to do, and I give great credit in a bipartisan way to both Chairman Rogers of the Intelligence Committee and Ranking Member Dutch Ruppersberger for working with every member on the committee, Democrats and Republicans, as well as reaching out to privacy and civil liberties groups and having maximum input by everyone. And they've been really listening to our concerns, and we've crafted what I believe is a very strong bill allowing for information sharing, basically allowing the government to share classified information with the private sector, the internet security providers, so that they can put these where we see attack signatures, and we have great transparency into the threats that are on the internet and the hacks that are taking place, the cyber penetrations, intrusions that are taking place. We can then share those threat signatures with the private sector. And what we're also allowing for is, on a voluntary basis, for the private sector to share threat information back with the government. So it's almost like, picture it like radar, that we have great situational awareness when we have information sharing going back and forth between the government and the private sector when it comes to sharing threat signatures, threat information. So we're bending over backwards trying to protect privacy and civil liberties. I would not support a bill that did not have strong protections for privacy and civil liberties. And I believe that the House Intelligence Committee bill does that. It could always be stronger, I'm sure. And we're still trying to work with privacy and civil liberties groups to give maximum confidence and hear their concerns and try to address those concerns. But
it strikes me as you were saying all of this, Congressman, too, that you've hit on something very important, and that is that you work with a lot of very sensitive information on the Intelligence Committee and some of the other work you do. And part of the problem here, I think, is a lot of the debate actually can't take place in public. And that is that you are dealing with such sensitive areas that maybe that is information that it may give everyone a greater understanding, but they can't really get into it as much because they don't have privileges like you do to be a part of the discussions of some of the serious sensitive information that's being transferred.
What we're talking about, threat signatures, is what we're trying to share with the private sector, and what we want the private sector to share back with government. In other words, the voluntary information that would be shared from the private sector would be what types of cyber attacks are you experiencing? What types of threat signatures are you seeing that, for example, the government isn't seeing, so that we can then better defend our networks, but also make sure that that information is shared with other companies so that they're not hacked. And again, what we do see on a daily basis, and the NSA is as good as they get with this stuff, but even they will say this is a difficult challenge, a difficult security risk to get our arms around, is that we're seeing on a daily basis where people's personal information is hacked and stolen, and people's information is already at risk out there. We have to do a better job of protecting our networks, because it's putting our country, I believe, at great risk.
Before I let you go, and I do appreciate you spending so much time with us and laying out what is a very complex issue and trying to put it in much simpler terms so we can understand it, Congressman, is you are on the Armed Services Committee, and I should ask you about the pictures in the Los Angeles Times, those of the United States military with supposedly posing with trophies of dead insurgents, those who would, for example, be suicide bombers. Just a general reaction or thoughts about what has been transpiring and the debate that has been taking place over the last couple of days on this.
The vast majority of the members of our military, the men and women who wear our nation's uniform, do an exceptional job, and they're always acting with great professionalism. It's unfortunate, it's disheartening when you see photos like this where you have some individuals that aren't acting appropriately, and the photos that you refer to are not helpful. And in this effort to secure Afghanistan and ultimately help us to bring our troops home once and for all, leaving behind hopefully a very secure Afghanistan where the Afghan people are fighting for and protecting and securing their own country. All these things are setbacks, and quite frankly, when you see photos like that, when they're out there when those situations occur, it also puts American lives at risk. Our men and women in uniform who are over there, that it winds up inciting violence. So I know there's going to be. I don't want to rush to judgment, and I have to. We have to let the investigations take place and exactly, figure out who is responsible for these photos and why they were taken. It's disheartening. It's frustrating. It seems like every time we turn a corner, something else like this comes up, and again, it's not helpful to our overall mission in Afghanistan. And quite frankly, I'm sure it's disappointing to the overwhelming majority of our men and women in uniform who every day are working so hard to protect our nation, put their themselves in harm's way to protect us here at home. And we're grateful for their service, of course, every day.
And not to belabor, but the Secretary of Defense had said that he called the Los Angeles Times, had communicated with them, and asked them not to print the pictures. They did, and they said they were given the pictures by a military person who said that he wanted to make a point about lack of leadership. Question to you is, should they or should they not have printed those pictures?
I don't think that printing those pictures was helpful. Quite frankly, I respect freedom of the press. But in my judgment, it's going to put American soldiers' lives at risk now because it's going to incite further violence, and I think that is unfortunate. I don't see I think that this could have been handled in a different way, and people that if those American soldiers that were involved in those pictures, people need to be held accountable. I guess I don't see the benefit to our soldiers by having those pictures published. It's my personal opinion. But the whole situation is unfortunate. I mean, if those photos are accurate and they're actually showing what they do, it's not who we are or what we stand for, and it's just wrong. And I condemn that.
Congressman, I appreciate your answering the questions. We went a little off where we were originally going to go, but I did want to ask that question. I appreciate your taking a shot at it, and thank you for being on the program this morning.
Okay, Tim, thank you very much. I
Thanks,
appreciate your interest in this very important issue of cybersecurity. We've got a lot of work to do to better protect the country and the American people.